Welcome to Meadowbrook Members Podcast. I am Jelly, otherwise known as Glacier Prince, and my co-host is Hitchcock, otherwise known as Alfred Henry. Our mission on this podcast series is to explore the stories behind the magic that was created at Meadowbrook. When over a span of 4 years, between 1982 and 1986, we saw the transformation of a small co-educational school with less than 1,200 students, 800 boys, 800 girls and 400 boys into a successful sports and scholastic champion, winning 7 major trophies, 3 Sunlight Cup, 2 Topping Cup, 1 Walker Cup, and 1 Nutriment Shield. And to crown these achievements, Meadowbrook also produced 2 Rhodes Scholars, Cavell Creighton in 1987 and Andrea Wright in 1989, both graduates of Meadowbrook in 1983. In this podcast series, we'll be speaking to persons, both males and female, who are actively involved in this incredible journey, along with friends and staff at Meadowbrook, which inspired the environment which created this golden era. We hope you enjoy our discussion. Please give us as much support and encouragement as you can on whatever social media platform you are listening. Welcome and thanks for joining us. All right, ready? So remember to like, share, and subscribe these Meadowbrook Members podcasts so neither you nor your friends will miss another Meadowbrook conversation. Thanks. Go. Today is Sunday, November 5th, 2023, and welcome back to another conversation about Meadowbrook Memories. Me as usual, Glacier or Lance or Jelly or Prince, and any one of those names will do. Join us this evening for this conversation as my co-host is my former Spanish teacher from first and second form, who I have never forgotten, not because I was good at Spanish, but because of a particular pen I think to school one day. But that, however, if you want to hear that story behind that particular pen and the full conversation of our co-host, Mrs. Nelson, you should go back and listen to episode number 17 and make sure you like, share, and subscribe to those Meadowbrook Members conversation while listening. And a link to this episode to Mrs. Nelson Meadowbrook Members will be provided in the description page. Our next co-host, and he has graciously allowed us to use this platform, and he'll join us later on. Don't need an introduction to our Meadowbrook Members community because he has been doing yeoman's work for the Canadian chapter of our beloved Meadowbrook alum for 20 years, and Wayne can correct me when he comes on. And he has been on these conversations as co-host a number of times, and he was guest on episode number 54. And you should go back and listen to Wayne's Meadowbrook Memories in his own words, and make sure you like, share, subscribe while listening to Wayne's Meadowbrook Memories. And a link will also be in the description page for Wayne's Meadowbrook Memories. Also joining us on short notice, and I must thank him for doing this, because Wayne called me and told me that he had a little emergency and he had to take care of it. And it's someone who I know from the conversation I had with him, who knows Spanish far better than I did. And you should go back and listen to Eastern Library's Meadowbrook Members in his own words on episode number 67. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe while listening to Eastern Meadowbrook Members in his own words, and the links will also be in the description page. So welcome back, Eastern. Our guest tonight will need a proper introduction. Our guest started Meadowbrook in 1980 and left in 1983. Meadowbrook was her first teaching job after she graduated from Micah and UW in 1980, and she taught Spanish, and by those years I was in sixth form. And as I've already heard earlier, my memory of Spanish class did not have anything to do with Spanish. And my inability to learn Spanish meant that our guest and I would have not have crossed paths frequently while I was in sixth form. However, our guest remembers the Meadowbrook staff as cordial, close-knit, and sociable, and the students as respectful, disciplined, and friendly. So without further ado, Meadowbrook members welcome Fredericka Codling-Ellis to our conversation, or Fredericka Collins, while she taught at Meadowbrook. Introduce yourself, Mrs. Ellis, and let me know what you would like to be called in this conversation, because I like Fredericka, 'Cause it rolls off my tongue like I know Spanish.
Thank you, guys.
So introduce yourself. Go ahead.
You can call me if you want to call me by my first name, then it's best to call me Freddie.
Okay.
Freddie. Okay. I just want to thank you guys, Prince, you and Wayne for inviting me. I didn't even know that Valerie was going to be a co-host. Anyway, thank you for your warm and pleasant welcome. I'm happy to be here. It's exciting as well as curious to make this connection after so many years, and I mean many years. As noted, I am Freddie Codling-Ellis, right? And as a former teacher from Meadowbrook High School, my stint was a mere 3 years, as you said before, Prince, just from 1980 to 1983. Not as long as many other teachers, including Mrs. Nelson, of course. So we are talking a long, long time ago, over 40 years. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It will be interesting tonight to see what memories can be unearthed or rekindled, as we flash back to another time way back when. I'm looking forward to recapturing any invaluable moments and experiences that memory will allow, because memories fade.
And the passage of
And I'll have
time,
to dig. I'll have to dig into the recesses of my mind.
Yeah, man. It will.
You see, guys, I'm not as young. I'm not that young teacher from Meadowbrook High School anymore.
But
the years have flown, and it's like a lifetime ago.
Yes, it has been a lifetime for all of us. None of us are that young anymore, Mrs. Ellis.
Yes.
Sorry. We're all. But the memories, what I realize is that the memories, once we start talking, things will just come up. Once we start talking. That's why I like having more than one person in the conversation, not just you and I alone. Somebody will remember something different. So, yeah. But thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Mrs. Nelson, you want to introduce yourself? Reintroduce yourself.
Welcome.
Sorry.
Well, first of all, I must introduce myself as a co-host, because I had no idea that I was co-hosting.
Oh.
but thank you for the promotion. It's very rare that one gets a promotion during retirement. But from Meadowbrook High School, I will gladly accept it. My name is Valerie Nelson, and I taught at Meadowbrook High School from 75 to 85. And I was just recollecting a couple, months ago after we did the initial interview, that this is the only school that I taught for 10 years. Between Canada and Jamaica, Meadowbrook High School is the only school where I taught consistently for 10 years.
Wow.
Kudos to Meadowbrook, kudos to my lifelong learning experience, my lifelong teaching experience. Meadowbrook holds something special in my educational career as being the school where I taught for 10 consecutive years. So that's my introduction.
Thank you, Mrs. Nelson. Easton, reintroduce yourself back for me, please.
All right. I'm Easton Liber, class of 83. Started in 1978. Then I also went on for sixth form. So I added 2 years onto that. Wayne and I started in the same first form, 1C. And for purposes of this call, Mrs. Nelson was our first Spanish teacher. And you have left such an impression on me, that it has lasted a lifetime, I must say.
All right, thank you, Easton. Thanks. So, as I said, thanks for sitting in on such short notice to make the conversation flow tonight. Thank you. And Mrs. Ellis, that's what I'm going to call you earlier. As you said earlier,
Okay.
I do have no problem with that, because the Fredericka might make my tongue roll too much tonight.
No one really calls me Fredericka. It's long. I asked my mom, why did you do that to me? It's a long name.
No, man. I'll address that, Mrs. Ellis. I don't have no problem with that at all. I don't know if you have listened to any of these conversations, but the first question I ask anybody who come on, did you choose Meadowbrook or Meadowbrook chose you?
Yes, I listened to a couple of your podcasts. Yes. And my answer to that question is going to be this way. Answering a question with another question. Why can't it be both? Anyway, I must say that my answer is really both. Meadowbrook chose me, I chose Meadowbrook, or better still, I chose Meadowbrook, Meadowbrook chose me. And I can amplify that by saying that I had occasion to be in that neighborhood over the years because I had friends living in Meadowbrook in that area. I must have passed the school maybe once or twice, a couple of times. I know one of my girlfriends' home was pretty close by. I was living at Mona still at the time because I just left UWI. I was still living in Mona Heights. And it so happened that it must have been in early July of 1980. And we were being interviewed for jobs. Lots of young teachers all over the place going to get jobs straight out of university. So a whole bunch of us met up at Arden High School, and the room was filled with people waiting to be interviewed for jobs, Spanish, etc., etc. And it was so overcrowded. And I overheard a conversation in which somebody said, "Oh, they're hiring teachers at Meadowbrook High School too." And just looking at the crowd and, edging your bet, I took off for Meadowbrook High School. I went there. The crowd was not so big. And so I chose Meadowbrook instead of staying at Arden. I chose Meadowbrook. When I went there, I did my interview with Miss McLennan. Is that her name, Barry?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, Miss McLennan.
She did my interview, and so Meadowbrook chose me. And that's why I say it's a case of both, not either or, but both.
And you had no awareness that Miss McLennan's specialty was Spanish either.
Pardon?
You didn't know that Miss McLennan Spanish was her main subject.
I don't remember, but she was a principal, so she interviewed me.
Yeah, Spanish was, that's what she taught before she became principal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
You see, I didn't realize that. Maybe that's why she interviewed me.
I thought you were there when Mr. Thorpe was there.
No, I left. I think he was there the year before.
Ah, okay.
Maybe.
Yeah, that was Miss McLennan first year as principal.
Yes,
I think.
yeah.
First or second year, yeah.
Yeah, I glimpsed him. I think I glimpsed him once or twice, around the area, maybe by the church or something like that. There's the church close by to the school.
Yeah.
I must have glimpsed him there, but I had no interaction with him.
So, what was the first day like, Mrs. Ellis, when you came onto the campus? What was it like?
Oh my, my first day? Oh my gosh, how can I remember my first day? I can't distinctly recall my very first day, but I'm sure it's the regular stuff like General Assembly and meeting your class and meeting other teachers and all of that. But I do recall my second day. Is that okay with you?
No, man. Your first memory, yeah.
First impression.
Yeah.
Right. So here I was. I was a fourth form. My class was. I was the form teacher for a fourth form class. I can still picture where the class is, and it was somewhere upstairs. It was a small school, so it wasn't a wide expanse of area. So I remember I was in my classroom, and back in those days, I guess teachers were supposed to do like morning devotions with your kids. And I was doing morning devotion with my class, and out of the corner of my eyes, I saw Miss McLennan like peeping or over, listening to what was going on in my room with my kids. Very interesting, because I can recall actually what the theme of my little pep talk with the kids was. we had these little booklets, and I'm sure you guys are aware of them, daily devotions or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I remember the topic for that day was, did you stop to thank a green tree today? Very
Wow.
unusual. Did you stop to thank a green tree today?
Ooh.
I guess in these days of, being conscious about the environment, it would be so apt today to do that. But after, reading it and discussing with the kids and saying to them, we really shouldn't be thanking trees. We should be thanking God for a new day. So that much I remember of my second day at Meadowbrook High School.
So what was the impression of the campus when you came to Meadowbrook? And why did you chose Arden first, or why you think you should go to Arden before you think about Meadowbrook?
Oh, remember, I was living at Mona Heights.
Oh, the convenience. Okay, yeah.
And the road, I think Hope Road. Where's
Yeah, man, you got that right.
Yeah, at least Arden is on Hope
Yes,
Road.
it is. It is.
You have that right.
I think Arden is on the way, like coming from up by Hope Road or one of those places.
It's a matter of convenience then, yes.
Yes, it was convenient, really, because I knew nothing about Arden. But because I had friends who lived at Meadowbrook, and I heard the conversation, and like my ears just pricked up, Meadowbrook. So I just made a beeline and just went there.
And you have never been onto the Meadowbrook campus before that?
No. I might have passed there maybe in the bus or something, never before.
So
but I guess it was serendipity. It was meant to be, because who knows? The competition was so great at Arden, I might not have landed the job.
So what was the impression like when you came on the campus the first time? You when you met with Miss McLennan for the interview and you started working there, what's the impression of the campus itself?
The campus, I do recall it looked small, and the atmosphere was very, very conducive to learning, very inviting. I felt good there. It was a good feeling.
So, were you intimidated that they gave you a classroom and a senior classroom at that to be a form teacher in fourth form? Because you were just out of teachers' college and they give you a classroom.
No, I had taught in secondary school a little bit before I went off to university.
Okay.
Not secondary. I think it's called junior secondary.
Yes.
Yeah, I taught at Tarrant Junior Secondary, and I taught the older kids too. So I was not all that, say, new to say fourth or fifth form. I think back in the day that they went up to maybe grade 10.
Yeah, the junior secondary school went up to grade 10, where they took
the junior secondary school. So I taught the older kids at junior secondary school.
Yeah, they took an exam.
I was not intimidated.
Okay, I got you. Okay, you had experience before teaching older kids and that sort of thing. Okay.
I did teach, I think it's a little bit over a year, and then I went to UWI, yes.
Yeah.
Because I had to finish my internship. Those days you had to do internship, 1 year internship after Michael College.
Okay. So you did internship after I left Michael, and then
Yes, then I taught, and then I went back on campus.
Yeah. So how come you end up teaching Spanish? You love Spanish from early?
Oh yes. From school days. I love Spanish. And then when I went to Michael, I did it as one of my teachables. And then, I never stopped teaching Spanish. I loved it because, when I was introduced to it in my first form, again, teachers have a lot to do with the way kids love the subjects. Would you agree with me, Valerie?
Yes, I do. I certainly do.
Yes. So I had a young teacher too, fresh from, she was training in Mexico, and she came back. She was very fluent and, very attractive teacher, and, you gravitate toward that. And so it was good. So my introduction to Spanish was pretty good. I did have, I think I did have male teachers too who taught me for most of the time. But my first year was a female teacher. I don't recall her name right now. But
So your first time introduced to Spanish was when you started high school?
High school, yes.
Okay, okay. And for you, Easton, was it the same that you learned Spanish the first day you walked in? You knew Spanish before you started?
No, never before. My first time with Spanish was with Mrs. Nelson.
Okay.
And she, like Miss Codling just said, the teacher has an impact on how you learn. Maybe nobody else had learned but me, but it had an impact on me.
I think Gliston needs to say something here.
Right,
And
no.
both.
That's why, I'm asking.
And so
I'm coming, Mrs. Nelson. That's why I'm asking the question. I say, what's wrong with me?
and I can say that for both Mrs. Nelson and Miss Codling, the way they presented themselves, not just as a teacher, but as a person. So you're I was attracted to both of them because they dress, wonderful.
Fashionable Eastern.
Fashionable. And so you say, well, I'm going to do whatever it is for this teacher because, not only are they attractive, but the way they present themselves, and Mrs. Nelson made sure I remember when we were in first form, she walks in the classroom, levantate, setentate. So you have to stand up and say good morning, and then you sit down, right?
Yes.
And so she commanded our attention. And she wore these glasses that was a little bit down her eyes, so she's looking over you, the glasses with those eyes, and you say, well, I can't do anything wrong for this lady. So... But it made me love the language, I have to say, because of how she taught us, not just you reading through the book. We got a lot of assignments to do that made us do things outside of the regular thing. And, she would mark them, bring them back and so forth. And then by the time I got to fourth form now was when Miss Codling came. And Miss Codling was young. Mark you, by this time I'm 16, 17. So young teacher coming in, dressing, high heel shoes,
yes,
walk a certain way. So you're like, okay, here I go again. So I have to be in this class and I have to learn. But I had wanted to do it in fourth and fifth form anyway, based on Mrs. Nelson. Mm-hmm. And so Miss Codling just kind of took the baton and I was enchanted by both of them, so I wanted to learn.
And for the record, Ethan, I think you said in your conversation that you took Spanish in sixth form as well and got it at A level.
I did, and I did it at university as well.
Right.
Wow.
Thanks to both of these ladies.
Okay, bienvenidos al club.
Yes, and I also went back to Meadowbrook and I taught for 1 year Spanish.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow, that's,
This is thanks to you both. That's why I said when Wayne told me this morning, I was just beyond excited. Whatever I was doing would be second, for this conversation. So I kind of threw it away though. My career path took somewhere different. But I also had work, as I had mentioned, that when I had my call, they had a youth conference. I think Miss Codling was the one who had something to do with it, but they had a youth conference at the conference center, International Youth Conference. Mm-hmm. And I went and worked as assisted the translators there.
Wow.
I think Miss Codling had something to do with it, but this was in 83, I think, 82 or 83.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Yes.
I have no recollection, but it sounds good.
But this is the impact that you as the hallmark, what I would say as a good teacher, that you may not even know you had such an impact, but you left a mark on someone,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so I'm sure Mrs. Nelson is asking, then what wrong with Glister?
So, one of the things about teaching as a profession is you never get to know the impact that you've made as a teacher until years after.
After, yes.
Yes.
This is testament to that. You never hear from the students, they've gone off things, but just to hear it now just proves my point.
Yes.
And on and on that point,
Mhm.
when you are actually teaching them, that doesn't come across until years later,
Right.
because they might think, oh, this teacher is so difficult, this teacher is so mean, this
Mhm.
teacher gives a lot of work,
Yeah.
oh, why do I have to do this? And then later on, in retrospect, they come to really
Yes.
appreciate,
Yes.
because we were students too at one time, and we
Yes.
Yeah.
follow in the footsteps of our teachers.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
I used to say, when I started teaching, I said I can recall all my teachers who were good teachers and
Mhm.
the ones who basically malpracticed. You
Yeah.
know,
Yes. We had some
you
too, but
can
I
you
never
can
got any
you
of
can make
those.
that determination once you enter the field. You can
Mhm.
know who was a good teacher and who was not.
Right.
Yes.
And for example, I had a teacher who, back in the day, she let us have a lot of free time on our hands, running up and down and doing stuff. And we loved her. But then you look back now, after you become a teacher and you got the training, you realize that that was a lack of discipline. There was no discipline there.
Yes.
Mhm.
So
It was
you
more a
don't want,
disservice
you're not
than
looking for
anything.
kids to be your friends,
Yes. It
you
was
know?
more of a disservice than anything else.
Yes, you have to be firm.
Very much so.
Yes.
And you
Firm and
can't tell this.
fair.
Let me ask a question. You can tell this one first, Mrs. Ellis. You think teachers are born or made?
Well, as in any profession, I think there are people who just are just natural. They have the aptitude for whatever they choose, and then there are those who don't. And the ones who do, maybe they last. And some people are adventurous, they try other fields. But just like in any other profession, I look at nurses and doctors and I say, I could never do that. I could never. And I've had occasion when I was teaching in the Bahamas. A friend came to my classroom door, because I was teaching middle school then. I was no longer teaching high school. The job I landed was, I was still teaching first form, which was, you translate that to grade 7.
Yeah,
I was
that's middle
teaching
school.
grade
Yeah.
7, a noisy bunch. And a friend came to the door and she said, how do you do that? How do you do that? The noise was just getting to her, you know? But you get you get so accustomed to it. It's what you love doing, and you do have control. Because I recall on one occasion, and Mrs. Nelson, you can bear me out on this.
Mhm.
You just have to take control of your classroom, the very first few moments.
Mhm.
Because if you lose your class, it's gone for the rest of the year.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
always started out as a tough teacher, and then I relaxed, let go and so on. And I remember one boy looked at me one day and he said, Miss, you're not mean, you just pretend to be mean. And then they come back afterwards and they, you relax in the classroom with them and you have fun, and learning become fun. But if you do not have that situation under control from the very beginning, once you don't have good classroom management, you're not going to enjoy the job.
Yes.
It's going to be a
That's
nightmare.
true.
So teachers are born. People can learn to get into the job and love it. But if you love it, you'll make a success of it. I find the people who are miserable are those who are not cut out for it, really.
That's true.
Yeah. And you, Mrs. Nelson, your position, not position, your opinion on that question: born or made?
I think it's a combination of the two, as Miss Codling said. I come from a long line of teachers. My mom was a teacher, though she was elementary. I had aunts who were teachers in Manchester. So I always saw teaching being modeled in my home. I would see my mom coming home with stuff to, prepare for her class. And when I was living in an extended family situation with all my cousins, I remember distinctly holding school during the summer, and and they would have to follow through with what I said. So I always had this knack for it. Um, And I've embraced it. No, as I said, she was elementary. I cannot deal with younger kids.
I learned.
Yeah, but so the older kids are my forte. But what I think you have to do, the minute whether you're teaching elementary or secondary, you have to establish that you are in control. Now, Mr. Glacier Prince was trying to show that he was in control. And he reminded me of that. And he also reminded me that you have to be in control. No matter if the kids are taller than you are, they come
Yes.
from money, they come from wealth, they come from parents who are, busybodies in your school. You have to show that you have gone to school, you have learned your subject area, but you also have classroom management skill. And you'll have fun after that. Once you've established those rules and those roles, things will go easy. Rather.
Yeah, and Easton, I know you say only taught for a year. You have an opinion in terms of what the question asks?
Yes, I think they are born because I embrace the teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't go to teachers college. I just went to UWI,
Mm-hmm.
and Miss McLennan had asked me to come back and teach there, which I gladly did.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that I always wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But even after I left the classroom, so I'm not in the classroom teaching, but in my job, I'm always the one who trains people.
There you go.
Okay.
So I think it's something that you're born and it goes with you wherever you go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you can be formally trained, but I think it's something you're born with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But if
Yes.
I just add, you may be born with it, but it has to be honed. It has to
Yes, it has to be honed.
be
Yes,
nurtured.
Yes.
It has
Yes.
to somebody like Miss McLennan, as you said,
yes,
saw something in you, and
yes,
he allowed that to grow and to thrive, and you embrace that.
yes.
yeah. I think I agree with you because I taught here for about 18 months, living in the States. I taught younger children. I taught fifth grade, which was like just before high school, and I hated it. I don't think I was born to teach. And in a sense, not that, like you, Mrs. Nelson, I think if it was an older kid, maybe I would have stuck around,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
got the training because I like teaching people things like you all. I just said
Yeah.
there. And to answer the question about, I was thinking about it as you were all talking about my struggle in learning Spanish. I think that didn't have nothing to do with Spanish. When I started school, and I realized that when I went to fifth form and I took O levels and I only got 2 subjects, if it didn't come naturally to me, I'm not going to do it at all. And Spanish was like a foreign language to me. I never learned it before. It was only until when I reached fifth form and repeated in fifth form that I started to apply myself and settle down. So it wasn't that I couldn't have learned Spanish, but it never came natural because I didn't learn it in primary school, but that was no excuse.
Right.
I was just the sort of person who said, if it don't come naturally to me, I'm not going to waste it. I learned that afterwards you have to apply yourself, even if it don't come naturally to you. Because I think you can learn anything you want to learn. That's how I feel these days.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah. So, Mrs. Ellis, when you came to Meadowbrook now, what were the students like in terms of compared to the other schools you had taught before? What do you remember Meadowbrook students being like?
Oh, my year and a half or so at the junior secondary school. In terms of discipline, Meadowbrook students, it was like cheese to chalk. It was such a calm and peaceful and disciplined environment. The kids were respectful,
Yes.
Well, I'm looking back now, and I appreciate that, that 3-year stint that I did because I think you guys had a dean of discipline, did you not?
I don't
remember
Well,
that.
Mr. Gordon, but Miss McLennan was such a strict
There was
principal.
a male teacher who was a dean of discipline. I do recall because I can picture him walking up
Mr. Gordon, yes, Mr. Gordon.
He probably was there now, but I don't
walking
think the
along the
title was
corridor.
there.
But I've never had an occasion to send a student to be disciplined. The students were respectful.
Yes.
And all I can say is that, maybe on occasion I might have given a few lines to a student for minor infraction, but basically writing a couple lines was like no kind of punishment, really. The students, I had no problem with them, and I'm really looking back now and appreciating how disciplined and respectful the students were at Meadowbrook High School, really.
So you gave them the lines to write in Spanish?
I should have, come to think of it, but I didn't. I don't think I did. I should have.
If I could just say something about that form of discipline, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it now, students on the panel here, but I think it's perhaps the most ridiculous form of punishment.
You mean writing lines?
Yeah, because I learned, and I don't know where I got it. But let's say you got 100 lines to write. If you were smart enough, you could line up 3 pens.
I know.
3 pens, and you could write that in notes.
This is coming from a teacher, Prince. You hear that?
No, but that's what we did. That's what we did, Mrs. Delphi.
I know, but I'm just saying.
You see, it's a carryover from high school too, because we did that in high school too. And I remember writing lines, and I would put in a wrong sentence somewhere in the middle of it, and the teacher would never see that. I must not, or I must not. I put in something different.
Yeah. But I hope it's not a practice, currently. It really is ridiculous. I mean, I think that if you had a detention, it had to do with the number of hours that you stayed there. But if you're able to write your 30 or 100 lines in 15 minutes, what happens to the rest of the time? I can't remember what happened. The smart kids would have the 4 pens lined up and rattle them off. Anyway, that's just an aside.
Tie them on an elastic band, yes. Not a stand up, Mrs. Nelson, they'll be tied together.
Oh, okay.
But let me ask a question though to you, teacher, because when I thought I had struggled with this, is like, were you guys able to mark all those papers in terms of how do you go about with that?
Yes.
Yes. We did.
But that must
it was your professional duty. You did nothing else. I mean, that's how you knew what was happening with the student, what learning was taking place, what more teaching had to take place, because there may have been something that you missed in communicating to your students. So I was a diligent marker. I would take weekends marking. If I had a doctor's appointment with one of my kids, I would take the papers there and I would sit and I would mark. I think that's what teachers do. You either plan your lessons or you mark. And you plan your lessons and you mark.
Yes, on that point too, I marked. I was always marking the work because it's a part of your professionalism that you're not going to shortchange the students.
Yeah,
and I have gone to the doctor's office with like tons of test papers and stuff, sitting there marking weekends marking. I remember one night I did an all-nighter because the marks were needed the next day. Not in Jamaica, but I did an all-nighter in Canada here because I had to have the results in the principal's office the next morning. And when I went in for that meeting, everybody was giving their marks. I think it was my first year teaching in Canada here. And when they gave their marks, and their marks were pretty high, and I asked a teacher when we exited the room, I said, how did you get such high marks for your kids? We had to average the class, something like that. And he said, his comment was, you give them what they want. Now, coming from a Jamaican background, I would never have thought that in a million years to shortchange or to use shortcut or not to be honest and hold your integrity as a professional.
You said that.
So we mark.
And I thought that's exactly what happened. Because why I asked a question. When I was teaching, just like what you said there, on my first year teaching. That's what my mentor told me. See, I can't mark everything. I forget. Just like what the person said to you. You literally have to make up the grades.
Yes, I was shocked because it was something new to me.
No, when I learned that, I'm saying there's no way I could stay in an industry like that. I mean, it may be different in Canada, what I'm talking about here, where I live in the States here. I'm saying I don't want to be part of something that's shortchanging people for the education that and that's what they're doing. I have no respect or regard for most education system here because I was teaching in there and I see what they're doing.
Yes, I fully agree, and I feel the same too.
And there's no wonder why the standards have dropped off so much. Because just like the man said to you, Mrs. Ellis, give them what they want. You give them what they want. I don't know. There's no accountability in terms of saying it is affecting us, the society, right across. And I don't know about it is in Jamaica, I don't know if that reached there. But I'm saying to myself, was the teacher marking my papers when I was, and you are saying yes. Yes, but I don't know. That's not what I see here when I was teaching, though. That's what I see here. But that itself is a problem. That itself is a problem. So, Mrs. Ellis, what were the teachers like when you came into Meadowbrook now? What was the, how you found the teachers?
Well, you see, there was a whole bunch of young teachers, so we had a great time socializing, really. Outside of school, we did a couple things together. But some of the teachers who I remember, Helen, of course, Helen Barbo, Rory, Rory McGregor. Not to be disrespectful, but I think Rory had a big mouth. I mean,
he spoke very loud. Yes, he was
loud. Yeah, something like that. And there was Beckford and Jerry.
Isabel Nevis, yeah.
Yes, and there was a young teacher too. I recall her mom. She and her mom taught there. Do you remember her? I think her name was Andrea. She was probably fresh out of a sixth form and joined the staff. She was a young girl, must be the youngest on staff. She and her mom taught there. I don't remember what subject she taught. And then there was another teacher who I remember. Who else do I remember? Blossom, Mrs. Laidlaw, and
she recently passed, Mrs. Ellis. You aware of that?
Yes, I'm aware. Mrs. Nelson had told me. And there's another teacher that passed too. Her name was Melody.
Peart, Colleen Peart.
What's her name?
Colleen Peart.
Okay.
Oh, right. You're probably talking about Mrs. Campbell, Melody Campbell.
No. No, Melody Campbell, Russell Campbell.
Yes,
but
Russell, yes.
Colleen Peart, Peart. She was a young teacher, and she subsequently died.
Right.
Yeah.
So I remember those, and there was another teacher too. And there's another teacher who we used to poke fun at in the staff room. The big joke is that out of respect, I won't say her name, but we used to laugh and said she never cashed her check. She was so rich, she didn't need to teach. So every month we would say, "Oh, this person didn't cash her check this month." So the staff, we had fun in the staff room too. I recall we had, and students wouldn't have known this, but we had a book in the Oh, Valerie, you remember? We had a book in the staff room where we wrote down when kids wrote their exams, and they wrote certain things that were just funny and just out of this world. Where did that come from? So we used to write down these little quotes in the book.
Yes.
And when we had some downtime in the staff room, we grabbed the books and we'd laugh and read out some of the quotes from the kids.
Yeah.
And I can remember maybe about 2 or 3, I'm not sure, providing a whole lot of levity in the staff room.
Oh, gosh,
I think Helen, I remember, Helen was a science teacher, right? Biology, right. She set an exam, and one of the questions, the answer was the Anopheles mosquito, something like that cause malaria or something like that. And the student wrote the word, and the joke is, student couldn't. There must be, I guess that's an auditory learner, because she must have heard it, never seen the word. Instead of writing Anopheles, she write and then Nuff, N-U-F-F, and then Ophelia. So it was a joke, Nopheles.
That is funny.
And
funny.
another time I remember in the staff room to reading that book of jokes. I think must have been from a geography question. A student wrote like the answer to what is a cloud, and the answer was a moving body of smoke.
Mhm.
Oh, moving body of smoke.
Yeah.
Smoke. So
That's
we
not
had
wrong,
we had quite a few
Yeah.
jokes in that book. Those two
Oh,
jump out
God.
at me.
That would be
You
a
So
nice
we
book.
had good time together, and
Yes.
outside of school we went. I remember, back in those days, pizza wasn't a big thing. It was like a
A
novelty,
novelty. Yeah,
really.
it was,
And there
yes.
was a new pizza store up in Ligani. I don't know if you were there that time,
Yes.
Valerie. If it was the
Shake is.
second when you came back.
Shake is, or shark is, something like that.
Yes, I know it started. I knew it started with an S. I couldn't
Yes.
remember.
Yes.
And we went up there to have pizza.
Yes.
And I remember sometimes too. I think it was. I don't know when it was the World Cup soccer, but I know you guys do a lot of sports on the podcast here. I guess female teachers, we couldn't have a lot to say about sports except maybe Valerie, I guess. But I remember it was a World Cup year.
Yeah, 82
It
was the year the World Cup was
82.
held in Spain.
Good.
Yes.
And
Italy
we
won the World Cup
teachers
that
after,
year, yeah.
because we taught the morning, we didn't teach in the evening in the extension school, so we had time left over to go and watch the matches
The World
and
Cup
so on. I
matches, yeah.
remember we went by Jerry's house. I think
Yes.
he
Yes.
lived close by.
He lived
Yes.
across the street, yeah,
Yes.
Springburn.
Yeah.
Right. And we went to watch, and I think all of us were rooting for Brazil, and we bought a lot of patties, and we sat down ready to eat patties and enjoy the match. And a quick time, Brazil lost the match, and it just put a damper. It just put a damper on the whole thing. I don't even think we ate our patties. We were so disappointed.
That has been, Mrs. Ellis, for the record, Brazil's most famous defeat in all the World Cups. I've never forgot that. 1982 World Cup. Italy beat them, and Italy went on to win the World Cup. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
So that's one of the memories I have. Us sitting together, having socializing.
Yeah.
We did a lot of that together.
Mm-hmm.
We even had Barry, you recall us having like a gym class?
Yes.
We did, yeah.
Yes.
Teachers, we did our exercises together and stuff.
Yeah.
But let me ask you something, look. I mentioned something about you said extension, or I didn't experience that at all. I know Easton did. What was it like as teachers, where the school was divided into two shifts? It was an experiment they tried in Jamaica. I don't know if they tried anywhere else in the world. But what was it like for you first, Mrs. Ellis, in terms of teaching? Or did you ever have a teacher on a second shift?
No, I never taught a second shift, but I had good rapport with some of the teachers. I remember some of the teachers because a few of them were from UWI too. But I didn't have any experience there. I don't even know what was the qualification, if the kids had any less, like if they won half a scholarship or what. I can't recall. Or is the fact that the school was so small that it couldn't house everybody at the same time? I don't know.
That was it. So they split us in two.
Yes. It's a yeah.
Yeah, they started taking more children into. It was, I think, a mandate from the Ministry of Education where they had to take more children to pass the common entrance, and then there was no space. There was no space at all. Because I'd never experienced that at all. I came to Meadowbrook from first to fifth form, and that never even crossed my mind. I was just wondering if few teachers have any. I know Easton as a student, and we talked about it where he went through the two shifts. You went through.
Yeah, because first form we were on morning shift, but then you also had first formers on morning shift in the second shift. Sorry, on the second shift. Then we rotate. So when we got to second form, we were on second shift. Then those people who were on second shift came on the morning.
Yeah.
Then third form, we did that. In fourth form, everyone was all fourth form and fifth formers were on the one shift.
Yeah,
so that's how Miss Codling would have known, because
it was the
she
first
taught
three
us
form
all
alone.
together.
Yeah, that's correct,
Yeah.
Easton. So let me ask you something though, because this might answer my question. You think the quality of the teaching was different between the first and the second shift?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
That's what I thought. Because when I talk to people like yourself and your friends them who are on the podcast, I
Yes.
never got the impression that it made a difference at all. In terms,
No, it didn't. It didn't. It only made us feel only we all because we were separated, then you would think, you know, if we were in first form and morning shift, then we would be like, oh, there must be something wrong with those kids while they're on the second shift.
Oh.
Then when we got on the second shift now, we figure, well, what's wrong with them while they're on morning shift and we're on second shift? So that's how you look at it. But the teaching, no, was no different. I mean, we had excellent teachers as well on the second shift.
and the same question to you, Mr. Taylor. Did you ever think so like the students? I know you didn't teach them at all. Did you ever think any different than the students on the second shift? Mrs. Ellis?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Truth be told, I'm sure I didn't even focus on that.
You never cross your mind at all. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
If I could just add another perspective, Glaister, I never taught in the evening school at Meadowbrook. However, I taught at the evening school at Calabar.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it was the same bunch of kids that I had in day school. They were just as eager to learn. They just couldn't find a place during the day school. So
Yes.
between Calabar afternoon and Meadowbrook in the day, no difference whatsoever. The curriculum was the same. The students were the same. They were eager to learn. It was just at a different time.
Yeah, I'm glad.
So it was just a case of just utilizing the space.
That's
Yes,
correct.
that's it.
Because as we say, Meadowbrook didn't have that all many
Yes.
the facility
Maximize
to
school
hold
space.
everyone at the same
Correct.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the impression I got. I never got the impression if there was two ship at Meadowbrook, anybody felt any different.
No.
For many young teachers, because teaching salaries were not that great.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could have a timetable in a day school and in an afternoon, at least you would be able to survive. So you had the same quality of education taught by the same competent teachers, just to different students at a different time.
Okay. I don't recall. Did we have one assembly for the whole school or two?
No.
No, the second shift came in later, so theirs was around midday.
Yes.
Yeah, what I meant is, did we have any like a whole school assembly at any time? I can't
When
recall.
two shift was there, it's a good question, Mrs. Ellis. Did that ever happen?
No, never, no. Because they were
Okay.
always, and it was only up to third form. So we would have ours in the morning, and then the second shift had theirs in the evening.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we never interacted on a grand scale for the whole school. No.
So what you're saying, during that time that experiment was carried out, it's like at no point at all the entire school met as a body then?
No. It was impossible because there would be nowhere for all of us to
See, right. That is true, Ethan. That is true. I never even think about that until now, right?
Yeah.
But when you get to fourth form, I just say, no, yeah.
Fourth form, we all come together.
Yeah.
As one, and then fourth and fifth form, right? So Miss Codling would have been teaching us in fourth form, so she wouldn't have known no knowledge of what our split shift experience.
Yes.
Taught us all together.
And I don't think they have that. Any school in Jamaica still have that system, Eastern?
They do. They still do. Meadowbrook still does it too.
Really?
Oh, they still.
Yeah.
I think Excelsior was the forerunner in all of this because they have massive space there.
Yeah. I didn't realize they still do it. Some Meadowbrook still have two shifts in Eastern up the third farm.
I don't know how far up, but they still do. Yes. And then they wear I think they put on the uniform.
A little different.
A little different, yeah. It distinguishes the morning shift. We didn't have that when we were there. There was no distinguishing, but now they do. There's a distinguished thing.
Yeah, I know my wife went to Pembroke and it was like two different colors. They had a morning shift and an evening shift as well.
Yes, it was like pink and blue.
Right. And I live in Pembroke, so yeah.
They trim for the girl. They trim the sleeve of the blouse with the uniform material. So that's how you know one shift from the other.
Yeah, I didn't realize that's still happening though. I didn't realize that still
Yeah, but when we were there, the uniform, the epaulette was the same. Yes, but for the girls that there was none when we were there, but now there's a difference.
Yeah, there's no distinguishing feature between the morning and the evening shift when you were at Meadowbrook Eastern.
No, none whatsoever.
But
No.
neither the boys. I know initially, when Meadowbrook started was as an extension school, the epaulettes were different. You could know, you could
Yes.
distinguish. But once you started the shift system, when everybody was on the same thing, it was the same.
Yeah, we were all the same.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And that's a good thing. That was a wonderful thing. That
Yeah, the only difference was the time.
Yeah, it came a little
And
later.
otherwise we were never felt, left to feel like we were neither by the staff or any teachers or anything to feel like, because we were on the second shift, we were less of a student than
You
the
didn't
first.
feel like second class citizen.
I have a question.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
He said, what happens with sports events, and when you belong to a house? How do they do that in the second shift? Because we competed against each other.
We did. So, well, like sports day, everybody came together on sports day.
So maybe that was the only
Wow.
time then, yeah. But
The only time, but not for like an assembly. But then we would have interform, and they would make it during the time when the shifts overlap.
Yes.
So like the morning shift, our PE normally go towards the end of the day so that it accommodate the evening shift who are coming in, then they get the classroom.
Yeah.
So when we have like interform sports now, they make it somewhere in between when we're finishing and they're starting.
Good. That makes sense.
And you know what? No, I think about it, Eastern. That was probably one of the main reasons why Meadowbrook became so dominant in sports in the 80s. And it was that an influx of whole lot more students.
Yes.
Whole lot more. The pool got bigger than in terms of who we could have chose from. Because when I was at Meadowbrook, there was 3 farms. And by the time you guys, between the 2 shifts was like 8.
8, yeah, there were 8.
8, right?
Yeah,
so
there were
a lot
8.
more students, and I never thought about it that way before in the Eastern, and because it was like one place. So by the time you reach 4th farm now, it's like a whole heap more pool of people to choose from.
It was a combination, it's a glacier. So we had more students to choose from, but then the competition now was higher because you had so many, so you have to be the best to get to the top.
Yeah.
And then we had the teachers now who knew how to spot those talents and draw it out from everybody. But the competition was stiffer because then you're competing now. You say, well, okay, when you were there, it's 3 farms, right? So if you want to make the cricket team, you only have to go up against 3 other farms. But now we have 8.
Yeah.
So you have to be better. But remember, most of the teachers were the same from you were there, so it involved the teachers as well.
Yeah.
So it was just a combination of so many factors,
Yeah. I never thought about it before, Eastern. I mean, that's exactly why one of the successful results of that experiment is like, I didn't go through the shift system, but I can see now why it would happen. The more competitive nature, because so much more students competing for a team. And any team at all, whether it's a cricket team, a football team, or a table tennis team, there's lots more people competing for the.
There's more people there. The competition is stronger. So it brings out the best in the individual because now you realize you have so many people up to go up against.
Yeah. And talking about sports day, Mrs. Ellis, did you ever participate in sports day? And what are the fun memories you have of Meadowbrook?
I've been rocking my brain to see if I can remember which house I belong to. I can't, but I know I recall that we had cheerleading teams, and I think one year my house won the cheerleading competition. But I can't. If you remind me of the houses, let me see if I can recall which one I was in. What are the name of the houses?
Ward House, Bogle. That's what I remember.
Ward, Saunders, Rothney, and Gartshore.
Which one start with R?
Rothney.
Okay, that's the one I was in. I know it was an
that
R.
was the yellow one. I knew you were, because that was the house I was in, so I remember it.
Yeah, that was my house too, yeah.
Yeah, Rothney.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I don't recall much about the sport except for the cheerleading team itself. But in terms of the extension school, the houses would extend over to those
Yes,
students
the
who are
same
teachers.
houses. Yes, the
The
same.
same houses, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one big sport day for everybody.
For everybody, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the only time it looked like the school came together.
Only, yeah, sports day was the
Yeah,
only
yeah,
time.
yeah. It would have been the only time it possible because the school was closed just for sports day. So yeah, and it made sports day more competitive to Eastern. I can't say that.
Yeah, because you would know when we would meet for our house, like when we have our house meeting, is morning shift. Then the
Mm-hmm.
second shift have their own house meeting. But when you realize now that you're gonna compete for your house for sports day, it's tougher because now if you thought you was the best one on morning shift, now you realize you have the best one from second shift to go up against, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it pushes you to do better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can't say that. Can't say that. So let me ask you a question, Mrs. Ellis. What is the most embarrassing moment you can remember? You can look back on another book. You can look back on now with a smile. Did you have any wardrobe malfunction?
Okay, I'm joking. Sorry.
Listen, Prince.
Sorry, guys. I was choking. I was having some water. Can you repeat the question?
Your most embarrassing moment you can look back on, you can remember with a smile at Meadowbrook.
An embarrassing moment?
Yeah, that you can look back on with a smile.
I can't recall any. I must have had.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe stumbling in my high heel shoes. I don't know. Because those boys were so tall.
Yeah.
I recall that they were very high. Those shoes were very high.
Yes.
Spiky, I think we used to call those shoes.
Yes, they were very high.
Spikes, yeah.
Yes, so I didn't have to look up to the boys.
Yeah. So did you find the boys more intimidating than the girls?
No, they were just young guys, who, they have crush on their teachers and stuff like that. It was amusing, really.
So let me ask you something. Mrs. Nancy can answer this as well. Which sex you find more difficult to teach, the boys or the girls?
I find the boys more difficult to teach. I prefer teaching the girls. The boys, their hormones are running wild, and sometimes they're not focused. Not focused sometimes, but my preference would have been, over the years, teaching girls.
Okay, and you, Mrs. Nelson, which one you found easier to teach?
I think I'm going to fall into this whole narrative where, boys are not the best at languages and girls are better at languages. But I found I had some incredible students who are boys, who are males, who are good language learners. Girls have that easy facility. They're outgoing. They don't embarrass easily. They try their best. They like to perform. They like to outperform. And language is like that. It's a lot of talking. It's a lot of expressing yourself. So it was perhaps easier to teach the girls. But I think, as I said earlier, I think boys tend to be reluctant I think the same young men who were in my class as Spanish learners who did not excel perhaps excelled in Miss Barbara's class in science.
In biology, you have a point there.
The subject, and they could explore it a lot in biology, whereas language, not so much.
I think there was this tendency for the curriculum or the the syllabus to be so slanted in a way that, girls feel that they should gravitate towards languages and boys the science.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was almost as if it's not cool to have male students speaking Spanish or doing Spanish. They're more into the science field, and the girls more into the arts field.
Yeah. And that's the whole STEM movement and the STEAM movement is trying to correct that. I did, however, find that when it came to conjugating certain verbs in Spanish,
Oh Lord.
the past tense of poner,
Yes, you get
You
more
mean
attention.
I got their attention.
You got more attention, yes.
yes, everyone remembers that.
Yes.
Try to get me on Facebook to conjugate the verb poner. I had to think that it had to be in the past tense, that what he was looking for.
Yes.
I guess they would all remember the past tense.
Yes.
Maybe if Glacier knew that at school, maybe he would.
And you know what? Already you're talking, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's why I'd have to tell you. I'll tell you in a sidebar, Prince. I will tell you in a sidebar.
I know that flew right over my head because you're right, Ethan. If I knew exactly what it was, I'd be eagerly.
You'd be in that class of I remembered when Miss Codling started teaching me in fourth form, and the first day she was talking about this pluscuamperfect, and I'm like, okay, this sounded so good when she said it that I needed to learn some more.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but the other one is very worse, Prince. So I'd have to tell you another time.
Off the ear, behind the paid one.
Way off the ear, way off the ear. But
Yeah.
but when she said that pluscuamperfect, and I'm like, okay, what the hell is this?
that?
It got my attention.
I remember this. I know what I'm talking about now, but if I don't get it, like, trust me, I don't understand nothing that you guys said a while ago about that. I said, okay. But people who know Spanish understand. I'm going to tell you what I understand what I'm saying,
Yeah.
You remember Miss Richards? I don't remember Miss Richards, Mrs. Nelson.
What was her subject area?
Geography.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if Miss Sells remember that. And she taught me in second and third form. And then she left and went to teach at Priory.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you where my mind was going. It's like she was teaching us about like the weather.
Yeah.
And she started teaching about warm front and cold front.
Oh Lord. Oh God.
And you know where my mind went with, and I'm
That's the boys. That's
No,
how
right,
their minds work.
right, but
That's how their minds work.
exactly,
Boys.
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
Teenage boys.
Exactly. And let me ask you something though, both of you, and you take this first, Mrs. Ellis. Do you think it would have been better? You think it's better? And with the vast experience that both of you have with term, and you must have taught at either co-ed school or an all female or all male school. What do you think is best for child development?
I'm more into co-ed. I think they need that balance to boys and girls together than being in separate schools. That's my feeling about it. I think the co-ed system is much better. When boys and girls get together and they learn together and they learn to do collaborative work and all of that, and not being so conscious of their sex or anything like that, but just working together as another student. So I'm not into in terms of all boys school or all girls school. I'm more for a co-ed situation.
And you, Mrs. Nelson, your opinion on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a school is just a mirror image of what society is, and society is women, and to pull them off as just girls or as boys is not a natural thing as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
I think both of them learning together is the ideal learning situation.
Yeah, I don't think I could have gone to any other school but a co-ed school.
Me too. Yes, I fully agree. That was what kind of made the magic at Meadowbrook for us,
Mm-hmm.
Because I had an experience at UWI, as sitting under the tree at Faculty of Arts, Science and Tech, what's
Go on, you have it right.
was
Faculty of
FAGS.
Arts and
Remember what
Technology.
Yes.
it's called.
No,
And
Faculty of
Faculty.
Arts. Sorry, yeah, not yeah.
because I had worked a little bit before going to UWI. I wasn't fresh out of high school, like fresh out of sixth form. And we used to sit and muse and watch those girls from Westwood, and they were like wild on the campus. Like they'd never seen guys before.
Mhm.
It was so obvious that they had no form of interaction. So it's not healthy for the kids for them to be segregated like that and being in different learning space, really.
And you
To
went
be
to a
there
co-ed, you went
in
to a co-ed school, you
class.
said, Mrs. Ellis? You went to a co-ed school?
What?
When you were going to school, you went to a co-ed school?
Sure, I went to co-ed school.
Okay.
But I had friends who went to boarding school, girls' school, and I could see the difference. As I said, an example was on UWI campus. You could see the girls who were fresh out of some of those boarding school. They were just behaving strange. They were immature and just,
Yeah, I agree with both. I think that environment prepares adults for a different challenge. It's almost like separating is like preparing you for a different thing. Maybe war more than trying to collaborate with each other.
Yes, that is true. When we were in sixth form, we had a few girls came up from Immaculate,
Yeah.
and it was like they never saw boys before,
Yes, they go crazy.
Yes, they just went. It's like they wanted to get with every single one of us, but the novelty by the time we reached upper sixth, the novelty
I'd
still
worn
didn't
off.
wear off for some of them.
Why you say East and them skin just a catch a fire?
Catch a fire is that they never
Yes.
saw boys before, I'm telling you, it was like, because we went through up to fifth form, we had the girls there already, the girls had us. But when they came, it was almost like, I'm thinking like they never been on the street and saw boys or what. It was a whole different way of interacting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Maybe that was they were. But Marley was thinking about them when him sing him song, him album, Catch a Fire.
Maybe yes, them really did catch a fire. It was so pronounced. You couldn't even say, well, okay, not focus on it. It was just so pronounced.
Yeah. And let me ask you another question, Mrs. Ellis, because you were a young teacher at the time. Which song you remember at Meadowbrook? Not the school song. Which popular song that you used to rock to when you go Meadowbrook?
Meadowbrook. Which song? I think not necessarily a song per se, but the singers. I was into people like, I think the Shy Lights. I don't know.
That's a group. There.
Starlight. No, man. I love those songs from Mrs. Ellis. So.
Yes, that's a
The
group.
Starlights and the Stylistics and the Manhattans.
Right, those people and the OJs. I used to collect albums, and stuff like that.
And you have to explain to the people who listen to this, Mrs. Ellis, what's an album?
You mean on a record? A record?
That requires explanation. Record. What you talking about?
Oh my gosh. Language has evolved so much and words have different meaning, because I remember giving a comprehension passage once to, not at Meadowbrook, but at another school, and the passage talking about a record from Elvis, something I was playing, a 45 was playing. And the kids thought it was a revolver.
A gun, the 45, imagine that.
45, they had no idea what a record was.
Wow.
So it was very funny at that time.
Yes,
I used to collect the 45s and the LP albums.
Yeah, the 33 have a plate and two different speed, and yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that at all and have no memories of that at all. And involve the tape, and then everything now is digital. You just click on it and play. Yeah. Let me ask you another question, Mr. Seth. What's the best learning experience you got in those early years, those 3 years you spent at Meadowbrook?
Because Meadowbrook was my first first high school experience. As I said, teaching in the secondary school, the junior secondary, for the time I was there, the discipline was not very good. But Meadowbrook was like formative in terms of my my stick-to-itiveness as a teacher. Giving me the idea that this is where I want to go in terms of my career. Because as I said, I can't recall having any real bad experiences there. So it was a very positive experience, and it helped me to want to continue to be a teacher. And the response of the students. So that's very, very important, to get that feedback and feel that you are doing something, contributing to their future, and the eagerness that they have to learn. All of that helps to shape me as a teacher, wanting to stay in the career and give it my best.
Let me ask you, Mrs. Nelson, can think about this question while you're answering this, because I never thought about. Well, asked a different way, because I'm going to premise it by saying, I think teachers who teach at any school, I consider them an alum for the school. Not because they didn't go to the school. Once they were at the school for a certain amount of time. Just like how we have our alum association, I think teachers should participate in being considered as an alum. They might have their own school they go to. And the question is, Mrs. Ellis, and you can't do anything else, what do you think can be done to make past students want to contribute back to their old school? What do you think we can do to motivate students to want to give back to Meadowbrook? Let me ask it specifically.
Well, they need, first of all, to reflect on where they're coming from and how far they have reached in life and to whom they owe that. Because, when you look back and all that you have achieved, all that you have become, and you know that this didn't happen overnight, you had people in the background way back then who really helped to really shape you, to make you the person you have become. You just want to have that generous spirit to say, I can do the same thing for others too, who need a helping hand. So it's giving back, giving back and feeling the sense that you get from giving back. It's intangible, the way you feel about the feeling that you get from giving back, especially to your school, and knowing that they're paving the way to help the education of others who might not be as fortunate. Because we know that in Jamaica, a lot of these schools, they struggle. Kids are struggling families are struggling to send their kids to school, to buy books, computers, and other things like that, uniform and all of those. And so it must be gratifying to be able to give back. And I think that's what, the alumni associations do, in helping the next generation of kids to achieve something too. It's lending a helping hand. We can't just be selfish in what we do. We have to be able to take care of others too. And the best thing to do is to start with young minds and help them to be the best they can by giving back and having all of these associations that give back to the schools in Jamaica.
Well, and you, Mrs. Nelson, when you were on the podcast, I don't remember asking you this question, but what would be your elevator pitch if you saw somebody from Meadowbrook and you want to motivate them to want to give back to Meadowbrook? What would you say to them?
Well, I would send them to your Facebook page. I would send them to you, because I think you're answering the question for yourself. I think what you all are doing is what is going to make it work. I had no idea that there was such an association until one of you reached out to me. And I think that's a vehicle through which former students, former staff can support the students. Because I think there is a role that schools, that alumni in the diaspora play. But if they don't know how, it won't happen. I don't think a graduate will think, well, let me just send a check to Meadowbrook High School. Like, you don't know where it's going. But
Correct.
you have an alumni association, that vehicle. I mean, I spoke with Wayne. I'm going to try my best to make a contribution there. Those award ceremonies that you have, this interview, putting it out there, let people know that we are alive and well and we can help, is how I would answer your question. You're doing it. You're providing the vehicle through which it can happen. I when I heard about you, I passed it on to Miss Scotland. And I've connected with Miss Barba. So there are people out there who want to help, and you are providing them, as I said earlier, with the vehicle through which they can give that help.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to hear that. That was, I didn't start out thinking about that at all. As I admitted, starting out, I was, to use a Jamaican term, I was vexed, Mrs. Scotland, that we had done so well in sports in the 1980s, and I was a part of those sports team, and nobody was talking about it. It's almost like it was going in a black hole. And I'm saying, if the history don't talk about, and I decide to say, I'm going to talk to my friend, and if we just talk amongst ourselves and put it out there, and if when I get old, I can listen back over and over. What it happened that people want to tell them story to apart from the sports, as Easton would have rightly make sure I remember that. It's not about the sports. So.
I would agree with that too.
Right, no, it's start there, because sports is always, in any environment, sports is a big motivating factor.
That is true.
Sport is almost always where it starts, Eastern, but it's like,
Yeah.
everybody gravitate towards when West Indies cricket team was doing well, when the Women's World Cup, playing at the World Cup last time in New Zealand, or the Men's World Cup reached the final. So it builds momentum. I just said, Mrs. Nelson, and it's like, you don't know the impact it will have. Just like you teachers, you don't know the impact it will have until years later. You realize, Sarati, you were building a momentum and you plant. I think the term is like you plant an oak tree. I didn't get a chance to sit on under the shade and realize that you plant the oak tree. But
That's true.
it don't matter. It don't matter.
Yeah.
I just love having the conversation. And I like talking, as Mrs. Nelson, I know. I was talking in the classroom today when I got chided. So, so Easton, you have any thoughts on this? I know I'd asked you before. I don't know if you have any new thoughts to add to the question. What would be elevator pitch to somebody you want? And I know you guys recently started in Atlanta chapter. You're part of that chapter?
No, because I'm in South Florida,
Oh, in
but
South Florida,
I
okay.
support all of the chapters, whatever they're doing. I support it in whichever way I can. So
Yeah.
but you said what would be a pitch
The
for?
elevator pitch. You see somebody from Melbourne you haven't seen in years.
Mhm.
And you want them to get motivated just like you for one to start give back. What would you say to them?
Well, most of us, if not all of us, wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for the experience that we had at Meadowbrook. So, because that was the foundation. We built the foundation there, even though some people might not have been successful academically there, right? But we built the foundation on which anything else we did, we have to attribute it back to that experience, because that is our we learned, we did sports, we built friendships and everything. So it also helped to form our character and our personalities, and we grow up at Meadowbrook pretty much. So and like Mrs. Nelson said, the school was just a mirror of the greater society, right? And the teachers were our extended parents, so to speak. Some of them may have had a bigger impact on us than our own parents did, for whatever the reason may be. So we cannot say then we're gonna walk away from trying to help if we can. Some people might say, well, we had a bad experience here, so I just don't want to be bothered. But the experience you got from Meadowbrook is also a part of your participation into that experience. So if it was bad, then maybe you only had yourself to blame, So, because the teacher can do so much for you, the rest is up to you, because we were all at an impressionable mind, and our brain was just there to sop up everything the teachers were teaching.
And
So if one person learned, then everybody else had the same opportunity to learn.
I go expand on that, Ethan, because I think it's more than just the teachers itself, because
Yes,
sometimes it's somebody outside of what teacher your scope, For me, it was Mr. Beckford, and Mr. Beckford never taught me. Mr. Beckford taught chemistry.
yes,
You see, and Mr. Beckford had such an impact on me on the sports field because he was the coach at the Colts team. I've never
right.
forgotten that. The same thing, it was like life changing for me.
Yes.
It's
So it
something,
may not have been someone who taught you. I,
right?
I remember Mr. Nairn, who
Yeah.
taught POB. He never one day taught me, but he was the one that coached the school challenge quiz team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he opened my mind to so many things,
Mm-hmm.
that it changed me, with that quest for knowledge. It changed me. So, like you said with Mr. Beckford, so there's different things. Mr. Here never, he taught. I never played like cricket for the school, but in teaching you PE. He also, taught me other things outside of PE, because in order for you to learn what he was trying to teach you, you get some other lesson from it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So is what is the whole experience. So I don't see any reason why nobody would want to not even say, well, I'm going to contribute $5 or $10, or if it's not money, it's an experience. If you want to talk to the students who are there now, and share your experience that you had at Meadowbrook. Maybe, if you look at yourself in retrospect and say, well, I could have done this better. You can tell them, well, you think you're young and whatever, but do this now, so it will save you something, 10, 20 years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
Yes.
everything starts with the conversation. Look, I wasn't aware. I was aware that they probably a lot of most of the students who went to Meadowbrook though, were not aware of the history of Meadowbrook at all, and that itself is a
True.
problem. But this conversation we're trying. It's not that I set out to do that, but it will fix it in terms of that because I hear no talk and how good we feel going to Meadowbrook at the time Eastern. It's something to
Yeah. Yes.
so the students that come on and do what that is to bridge the gap from the beginning of the school, and we're in a unique place. I spoke to some people who started Meadowbrook in 1961, and their podcast coming out. So they started the
Okay.
school, started Meadowbrook before I was born. I was born in 1962,
Yeah.
right? And they were there from the beginning. So Meadowbrook is in a unique position, and we have students from the beginning until
Yes.
present. So we're in a
Yes.
uniquely good position where we can capture all of the oral history right now, Eastern.
Yes.
And, and,
Yes.
and it's just how we're going to harness it now. It's almost like, we're going to get it into the students and to make them listen it or make them hear the history.
I think we can do a lot of outreach at the school, because if they know, like, if you listen to, sometimes, none of us live in Jamaica now, but we were growing up. You heard that the prime minister went to Calabar or Woolman's or whatever. So they were throwing stuff out there, right?
Yeah,
If the students who are there now know that, um, you know, this 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 gentleman, he may not be the prime minister, but he end up in a nice little career path, but he was a student. Maybe I see myself there too. Like, for example, I went there last year because the school challenge team, I help them as best as I can. Back to the same thing again with the sports, that I was saying to you, Prince. I realized that from I was at school, the focus is on sports. So there are other people who represent the school, but they go unknown or
yeah, yeah,
unappreciated
yeah,
because it's not the popular thing, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I said, well, I adopted them. So I went down there last year. They wanted a TV to practice, so I brought them the TV. But I was talking to them and I said, listen, don't feel, because the general thing, they felt like, oh, I felt 40 years ago. Like, nobody at the school even know that they're practicing as hard as the basketball, the track team, and so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I said to them, this is where I am now in life because of the effort I made on the school challenge practicing. So you're already a success without even knowing it, because this will come into play down the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, don't worry about the glamorous sports where, if you're a guy, the girl's going to go after you because you play sports or something like that. But academically, it will take you somewhere. So they were able to relate to that because they could see someone from the future who was in their position. So if we do a lot of things like that at the school, then I think we will reach them more, because some of them, they feel, well, I end up at Meadowbrook with never want to come here in the first place. I just do it my 5 years and leave.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have that pride because it's not being fostered while they're there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could add something to that. Just when Easton was speaking, I remember when I was there before Miss McLennan returned, and I think Miss Morris may have been in charge. I could be wrong.
I remember Miss Morris, yes.
Remember Miss Morris? Yeah, she was in charge of the English department.
Yeah.
And to have our staff meetings up in the library after school. And she tapped me on the shoulder, and I became somehow the de facto head of Spanish. I don't know who else was in that department. Were you teaching at the time? Were you teaching Spanish at that time?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
because Miss McLennan came back by that time, so she came after.
So but just going back to that tapping on the shoulder thing. So that's what Miss Morris did, Margaret Morris.
Yes.
I've always pointed to that one act as something that instilled in me that desire to become a leader in my school.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, a leader in the classroom, and so when I returned to Canada, and got myself back in the school system, I moved on to become a department head in different schools, and then a vice principal, and then a principal. And I just wonder how many teachers from Meadowbrook who perhaps were touched by someone in leadership, whether it was the Thorpe or Miss McLennan or Miss Morris or whomever, who went on to become something else in their career path. So it's not just the students who are being impacted or given a tap, like Easton, as you just said.
Yes.
It could be some teachers who receive that tap from somebody who saw something in them, and there are big things going to happen to you. And so that's what we have to celebrate, not just at the student level, but at the staff level.
At the staff, yeah, because then it encompasses everything. It's a movement. It's a movement.
I know that we have a couple Rhodes Scholars from Meadowbrook. I mean, small school. Did somebody say 2 or 3? I can't remember.
Two it was necessary.
That needs to be tapped into.
Yeah.
So that's just my piece there. I think it's a gem of a school.
Mm-hmm.
Though I have to say that the school where I retired from, I used to call it the Jewel of the Northeast, because it was the Jewel of the Northeast. But so is Meadowbrook. Meadowbrook was a gem of a school. It did lots of great things for students and for staff who had there. Like Freddie started there as a young teacher.
Yes.
Young teachers went on to something else.
Mm-hmm.
It would be great.
And I think too, it was the response I got from Miss McLennan when after my 3 years there, and I was thinking of migrating, and the way she received me in her office, and we had a chat, and she was so understanding and very, very considerate of me, because I had not landed a job yet, but I was talking to her and telling her my plans, because there was a job prospect in Nassau, and I was going to travel. I had not resigned, but I was going to travel to the Bahamas to see if I could get an interview and so on. And I had friends, because you have some people who are negative in your life. Don't tell her anything. Just leave. Don't leave. And I'm glad I did not take that advice. I sat with her and I told her my plans. And then when I went and I got my job and I came back and sat with her again, had a chat. This must have been in July, I think. And it so happened that she had a best friend in Freeport. and she put me on to that best friend. She said she was going to give her a call, and she called that lady. She was also a teacher in Freeport, and in her age group, and that lady took me under her wings too in Freeport, and helped me to become the teacher I eventually became. And it's all because of Miss McLean and her attitude.
Yes.
I just didn't get up and walk off the job as some people had suggested.
Yes.
And she was so gracious and understanding, as a young teacher wanting to spread her wings and see what life was like out there. And, that I really appreciate that when I think about it. She was very gracious,
Because she had just returned from either Fredericka or someplace where she got her master's. So she knew what that journey looked like. So I'm so glad that you went and spoke with her, Do you remember why she was called Spanner, Freddie?
Why she was what?
Well, she was nicknamed the Spanner.
Oh, yes. I'm just remembering that name now. I'm wondering, I'm not too sure, but I'm wondering if she was sort of tall and slender.
Yes.
Yeah. She had an afro when afros were, for an older woman, she was sporting an afro, which was so. But the kids told me, Miss, she fixes everything. That's why they call her Spanner.
I didn't quite know that.
Mrs. What's her name? Miss Nevins came and she said Miss McLean took her under her wings as well, and and she said, Miss McLean called her in office one day. I said, I know they call me Spanner because I tighten up things around here.
Yes. She knew that she had that nickname.
Yeah, man, she just embraced the name. She embraced it. So she just making fun of it and turn it around back. So yeah.
Yes.
But what you guys were saying is so important, because what you're saying is that even though you're staff members, you still were touched by the gentle touch of Meadowbrook in terms of that. And you're right, Mrs. Nelson, Meadowbrook is a gem. Yeah. Meadowbrook is a gem in terms of how we can all talk. You talking about it from a perspective as Mrs. Ellis talk about it from a perspective as a staff member. And you realize you got touched a certain way by Miss McLean. We talk about it from the teachers who touched us. So Meadowbrook was like, and Easton, even though I'm sports biased, if you remember the introduction, and that the Liberty did that, I realized it wasn't just a sports school.
Yes.
That's definitely why I mentioned the two Rhodes Scholar in my introduction. I didn't just talk about, say, we produce sports trophy. I said we had two Rhodes Scholars to talk about as well, So that was the avenue and the thing for say, we have to talk about the academics as well, because that's important. Life is about a blend. So, but anyway, let me ask you a couple. But before I ask a question, Mrs. Nelson, I'm gonna blame you for me not learning Spanish, because Easton sent me those words.
Boy, Prince, you just throw me under the bus. I was trying to think in pride.
And if, Mrs. Nelson, if you had put those words on the blackboard when I just started first off, I'd be your best Spanish student. Anybody who want to know that Eastern have to know Spanish forgot, I won't be repeating it at all. I will leave it at that.
Exactly.
No, I've never seen
boys will be boys.
Trust me. Boys will be boys.
If you had paid attention, you would have learned it.
Yeah, exactly. What the point is, Mrs. Nelson, I want to learn more. I'm saying, No, you missed the mark with me, Mrs. Nelson, but maybe that's attracted some people there. I'm going to blame you for me not learning Spanish. You should have introduced me to those words. Sorry.
If you had put away that pen, you would have learned it.
Yeah, maybe. But remember, that pen was part of the problem. That pen was...
You want to tell Miss Codling about the pen?
Yeah, Mrs. Codling, let me tell you about the pen now.
Okay.
I carried this pen to school, and this pen was like, remember those magazines that you had to wrap in a brown paper bag to hide? This pen was a miniature version. When you turn the pen upside down, there was this naked lady with those words that Easton sent to me. was sharing the pen with my friends. And Mrs. Nelson just came and took away the pen from me. And didn't introduce me to the Spanish words. I said, okay. So took away the pen from me because I was distracting the class because that was me. I was
Of course.
You come full circle.
Yes. But let me ask you another question, Mrs. Codling. How does it make you feel bringing back all these Meadowbrook members after all these years?
Oh, it's priceless. Trust me, because I never gave thought to these things, and it's just like taking me back, to my very beginning. And I am reflecting now on my entire teaching career. And sometimes it wasn't easy in Canada because it's a whole different environment, and kids are not the way they were back then. And when I look back, I said, oh, those kids were so disciplined and respectful. And I have had some challenges in my teaching middle school over here over the years. I guess I could have gone into high school, but the first job offer that came up, I took it. And it was like grade 7, which is a part of the training anyway. When you do go to teachers college in Jamaica, you learn you specialize from grade 7 to grade 12. So I took the grade 7 job. A high school job did come up a couple of weeks later, but I had already made my commitment, so I didn't feel that it was right for me to walk off the job after a few weeks. Mm-hmm. But basically, looking back at Meadowbrook, I hold Meadowbrook in very high esteem for those formative years as a teacher too, and how it has shaped my career. So I'm looking, as I'm talking to you, I'm picturing the grounds and the campus and the staff room and all the fun we had. And I would not have done that if I had not had this occasion to meet with you guys. So I really appreciate it, really.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I must mention this to all of you because I spoke to Merrick Damar. I don't know if you remember him, Mrs. Nelson or Mrs. Ellis. And he migrated. He didn't complete Meadowbrook. I think he left either after 3rd form or after 4th form. Yeah. So he always felt like a missing piece in terms of he didn't get the full Meadowbrook. And when he had a conversation with me a couple months ago, and I asked him how he feel, and he said, "Him just feel like him graduate." It just felt like him say I must get a diploma and give it to him because I just feel like him graduate because he can't tell the story that he wanted to tell. He never feel complete because he left. It was during the 70s and he had to leave because situations and things were so turbulent for some people in the 70s. So but I know exactly what you're talking about, Mrs. Ellis.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It makes me want to, next time I go to Jamaica, pass by, and visit the school and see how things are. Just take me back to the very beginning.
Yeah, man,
make you want to reminisce.
Yeah, man. I want to get that in that frame of mind. You will want to give back to the school. So once a system in place, a proper system where an accountability in place.
Yes,
it will just flow. That have to be there, That have to
be there.
It's like we're building the groundwork, Eastern. That's what's happening right now. We're building the awareness. We have to build the accountability. That has to be there. It can't work. People want to give back, but they have to know when they give back, it is accountable.
Yes.
And why they give back, and why they give it back. They can't just give back for anything. They have to know why they want to give back. So,
correct.
Yeah. But that I enjoy that sentiment, Mrs. Ellis. I appreciate you saying that. Let me ask you a couple more questions because believe it or not, we have been here for almost 50 minutes short of 2 hours, and we can't cut it off. We'll soon cut it off before the 2-hour mark. We just have a couple more questions before we close it out. What message you would give to existing students at Meadowbrook, or future student or staff member? Any staff member who coming up who going to hear this podcast next year, 5 years time, or students here? What message you would give them about Meadowbrook? What message you want to pass on to them?
In terms of the teachers, I would say to them, you are placed in that position to really make a difference to lives, and therefore, it's not what you say or what you do but how you make your students feel. It's very important, in helping to shape young lives. And they should not really look at teaching as a way of, making money, because I'm sure the salary is not that great anyway. But what can you do to shape young lives and just offer them something? Be an example to them so that they can see where they can go in life, because as many students actually become teachers themselves too, based on the teachers that they have had. So it's very important that teachers be exemplary in every way. It's not just what you say or do. And for the young kids who are in school, I would impress upon them to persevere and to carve out specific goals for themselves and objectives that they want to achieve in life, and find some teacher, maybe guidance counselor, or somebody that they can talk to on a one-to-one basis to give them advice how to really go about planning for their future. Find that teacher, because I remember one of my teachers, he would in the library, he would actually suggest books that I should read, and that stays with me. So you want to have that relationship with your teachers, and be able to get some insight into what lies ahead. And I'm sure teachers are generous in terms of their spirit to help these kids who seek them out and just don't go to school to socialize, because I know it's a totally different environment now from when we started out as young teachers, Mrs. Nelson. And they are so distracted with their devices and all of that they don't, learning is not paramount to them anymore. So we just have to instill in our kids the importance of learning. There's something, there's an old saying about a good education will never decay. So they just have to have that in mind and strive towards that goal.
Yeah, and just as you're talking, two questions come to my mind quickly, and I want both of you to answer this. But you first, Mrs. Nelson. Do you think it is more difficult to teach now than back then? And then the second part of the question, you taught in different countries. Which environment is easier to teach?
I don't know that I would use the word easier. Times have changed so much. I think, just to piggyback on what Freddie said about the distraction, I think there were fewer distractions. But at Meadowbrook, we didn't have to deal with electronic devices.
We only had to deal with a pen.
With a pen, yeah. And I could handle the pen, as you saw how I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's different. And yet I know those tools can be used as a part of the teaching environment. If teachers knew how to include them in their teaching, it could work. But bottom line is, was it easier? Then it was easier because you had fewer distractions. I think there are more aids that teachers can use now that we never had in those days. I remember that guest texture machine.
And the ink on my fingers.
The ink on your fingers, and if you made a mistake and there was something that you had to do, and then you had to roll off 25 and then it wasn't enough.
Yes.
Do I want to go back to that?
No, I have to explain to the listeners, Mrs. Nelson, what I get sent in a machine.
Oh,
please.
Predated fax machine or copy machine.
So you had a typewriter. Did we have a typewriter in the staff meeting? I don't remember. But you had to handwrite it. And you had to be very, very careful. The size of not a regular writing sheet, a bit longer than that.
The
longer version.
Legal paper, I think they call it.
Yes. There was stylus that you use. You could either type, I think, or you use a stylus. I like my own handwriting, so I would use a stylus. But if you tore that paper,
yep,
then you're in trouble. So you had to be extremely careful, and then you had to go to this machine, and you had to make sure there was enough blank paper in it. You had to make sure you did it before the office staff left. So there are all these things that you had to be juggling.
And you had to spread the ink, I think.
The ink, yes.
Oh
For it
yeah.
to roll around that big
But
drum.
Yes.
it was to the question, was it easier then in terms of aids? No. You had to invent everything. You had to bring in your own supplies that you wanted to motivate your students. Um, you know, do I between Jamaica and Canada, two completely different stories. I think both of them offered me opportunities to grow and opportunities to learn and opportunities to share with my students. I can tell you from having taken students from Meadowbrook to Puerto Rico, that was a highlight of my career there. I never thought that was going to be possible economically, number one. The kids were eager, but just exploring that possibility and that opportunity, they all embraced it. So, going to the American embassy to get them their U.S.
Visa.
and the visa and sitting there at 4:00 in the morning, that was a part of it. It wasn't just the airport. So is it easier now? I don't know how many excursions like that take place in schools. That I don't know to what extent the classroom is expanded to improve their learning environment.
Yeah, I remember that the trip, Mrs. Nelson. I remember I wasn't able to go, not
Mhm.
because I couldn't the Spanish, but my parents couldn't afford it. But
Yeah.
it
And
yeah,
it was understandable. That was quite understandable. So that's why it was such a bold move, because there was some fundraising, but clearly there are some students who were on it who were not the greatest Spanish students, but had the financial security or possibility to go. So there was that. Equity issues. I don't think we saw that many students who were not able to be in school or who were impoverished because everyone wore a uniform.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that showed that there was equity there. Whereas in schools here in Canada, it's not the same. You can see who is wearing your high-tech stuff and
Designer
your
stuff. Yeah.
right. So and the teachers are not moved by that, but students are.
Yeah. That's the
Yes.
So
truth.
we're talking about two completely different worlds and situations, and I don't know that it's that fair to compare.
Yeah.
But there are more opportunities to enhance the learning environment now. But just the same as taking a bunch of kids to Puerto Rico was enhancing their learning environment. So you could go down the line and compare and tick off and contrast. But I think teachers provide a rich learning environment at that school, and everyone who was there and now should be very, very proud of it. One of the things I would love to see happening, and I don't know to what extent it is the inclusion in the curriculum of values education. So as far as I'm concerned, a curriculum is not just about math and English and science and geography and history, the rest of it. It's about how to develop individuals, teenagers, to be citizens, to be global citizens, to take care of their neighbors, their community,
Yes.
take care of the environment. That's a big push now. To what extent is happening? I see some issues with discipline, not at Meadowbrook, but in Jamaica in general. And to what extent can that curriculum include those things that are important? I know there's a course here for kids in Ontario, like civics. And so they learn about their civic duty.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's compulsory there. Careers is also compulsory. Is that compulsory there? So there are things that you can compare. There are things that you would love to see happen there that would improve that learning environment within
Valerie,
and in the community.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Yeah. Go ahead, Miss Ellis. You there? I wonder if you're here. Mrs. Ellis. Easton, you there?
include
I'm here,
things
yes.
like.
Oh, go ahead, Mrs. Ellis. We weren't hearing you. Go ahead. Maybe your mic was on mute.
Can you
Go
hear
ahead.
me?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah.
you now. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I was just saying, to pick up on that point that Mrs. Nelson was making, that, teaching values, we're thinking of things like climate justice and social justice, racial justice. All these things need to be learned so that the kids can it should be in terms of the curriculum too, so that they can understand what's going on in their world and don't just jump on any bandwagon, but to be fully informed in terms of that. And looking back and in comparing the school back then, systems back then and now, I think parents form a great partnership in these days. I can't recall a lot of parents being so totally involved in their students' education back then. It was mainly the teachers and the students. I do not know if parents are participating more, attending interviews and so on, but my experience in the Bahamas and in Canada here, that when you have parent involvement, that partnership becomes so much richer, and it helps to facilitate learning more, because we know parents know the expectations and students know the expectation, and they can't be manipulating and playing off one against the other. So having that piece there, the parental part, I think is very, very important. And I've found that to be an integral part of the education system in Canada here. I do not know to what extent we had that so much at Meadowbrook, and I would hope that, parents would be encouraged to be there for their children, to attend meetings and functions, anything that the school puts on, to be fully involved in their children learning experiences. So that's how I look at it in terms of the difference then and now.
Yeah, okay. Let me ask you, well, not really a question. This is just a last comment before I ask the closing question, Mrs. Ellis. And you take this one first, Easton. Is there any question or any topic that I think I could ask that I did not ask Mrs. Ellis?
No, I think you covered pretty much everything that kind of involved her, that you triggered her memory, which was very good. So yes, I don't think you missed anything.
And Mrs. Nelson, any question or any comment that you think I could ask?
I just want to say that I'm grateful to you for you to be able to help me to reminisce and to look back and look at things in retrospect, and things that I would not have thought of. They were somewhere in the back of my mind, and it come to mind now. And I actually, just thinking over the last few days, I realized that I did not only teach Spanish there, but I taught a year of history. I think a fourth form, maybe a student or two listening to your podcast can remember that I taught them history. I think must have been in fourth form, because the CXC exams were just coming on stream.
Yes.
And I remember that I taught that first year because it was the only subject that I taught that required coursework. Spanish did not require coursework, but history required coursework. And I never taught history again until I came to Canada here, because I only taught Spanish in the Bahamas. And so for me, the only school I would have taught CXC to would have been Meadowbrook High School. So you have jogged my memory, and I appreciate that. And I hope I've made a difference to some students there.
Oh, definitely.
Not only in Spanish, but in history too.
That was my favorite.
History
subject.
Actually is my second love.
History is my favorite subject. I love reading history. I just love that's the only subject I pass at A level. So I have and that's what I did my degree in when I went to UWI.
Okay.
I have a Bachelor of Art in history. So, but yeah, I have a love for history as well, Mrs. Scotland.
Yeah.
I think you also made an impression on the girls and how to dress, Miss Codling.
Yeah. Wonder if she hearing you, Mrs. Nelson. No.
I think she's turning off her.
I'm not seeing her.
Freddie, you there? The mic is on and off.
The mic tripping out on her, yeah.
Yes, in and out. Yes.
Maybe that's the Wi-Fi. So,
You mind?
yeah. She was saying you made an impression on the fashions for the girls at Meadowbrook with your dressing.
If they were impressed.
Yeah.
Um,
But we need them to.
It's
I,
the statement. You don't
you
have
know something, I was just being myself. So, I get compliments here, there, everywhere.
Well, you did.
I just,
You did
I
make an
just
impression.
love,
You did make an impression on Easton. So I'm certain the girls would have been looking on and say, "Wow."
yeah,
Yes, for
I
sure.
guess so. Everywhere I go, the kids always comment on my
Yeah,
dressing.
yeah.
It's just, I just take it, just like that. It's
Mhm.
just a
Yeah,
part of who I am. So,
yeah. I sent you a yearbook, Mrs. Ellis. 1983 yearbook. I'm not sure if you're in that, but you can look and see.
Yes,
I
I believe she's in there as Miss
Yeah.
Codling.
I just sent it to you. I just sent it to you before. I just didn't remember.
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't.
That would
Okay.
dry your memory some more. So,
Thank you so much. I'm grateful for
yeah,
that.
Mrs. Nelson.
Yes.
Any comment or any topic you think I could have asked Mrs. Ellis that I didn't?
no.
I think you did a very comprehensive account of our Meadowbrook years. I can't think of anything offhand, but I'm sure maybe at the end of this, when I look back, I might think of something else. But right now, I think you have touched on so many a wide array of topics, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Could
what
I
we-
ask one last question? Freddie, do you remember where the sports field was?
Not really, it's funny that I remember the sports day and the cheerleading teams, and I have no idea where the sport. Can't recall where.
We had to walk off school property to get to it. Am I correct, Lester?
Yeah,
Yes,
correct.
it was a far away.
and maybe-
far
Was
away
it at
from-
the Was it at the back
No,
somewhere?
it was called
No.
Bottom Field. Was that?
At the foot of the hill.
Yeah, bottom field. Yeah.
Okay.
It was weird, and yet it didn't stop people from going.
No, it was
No.
the famous. It was part of the uniqueness about Meadowbrook. The fact
Yeah.
that the Bottom Field was separate from the campus.
Yes.
And the current principal have big vision for that field, in terms that it's almost like he want to turn it into a second campus.
Oh,
And like a sports complex. When I spoke to him when I went down
That-
there earlier this year.
that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. But that's a big vision where I got to put things in place. But that's something I've been talking to him about, and hopefully we can. That's one I think we need from this conversation, Easton. A
Yes.
big vision. Where you can look into and say, you might not live out to see it, but you say you have a big vision to say, you visualize Meadowbrook having a big multi-sports complex on our bottom.
Yeah, and there's no reason why even
No,
if we
none.
may never live to see it happen that we
No,
can't
I
help
know
make it
exactly,
happen.
Easton. None at all. You just have to. I just have to start talk about it and talk it up, and I might never live to see it. But
Yeah.
guess what? If I put the vision at somebody head, somebody might be a billionaire who's a past Meadowbrook student, and I say, yeah, I like that
Yes.
vision there. I can just give
Yeah.
them the money for pay feet. So
Mm.
that's why
So-
I say that.
Yeah. Can I ask a question? So there seems to be a huge sports focus. Tell us a little bit more about what's happening academically. Do they have a strong computer program? Do they have a strong STEM program, STEAM program, languages? Because those are the areas that I would like to show to
To
find.
participate in, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, they do. I think they have a program where they call what's the word they use? Not artificial intelligence, but something similar to that. We have a nice program for that, a strong program.
Oh, the robotics thing?
Robotics, yes.
Yeah.
There's a good robotics program there, Mrs. Nelson, and that would be science based.
Mhm,
So I'm saying
mhm.
academic based, as you're saying. So yeah, there
Right.
is.
What about languages?
Languages, yeah. But what the principal thinking about Bottomfield, not just about sports alone, I'm thinking about like
Yeah.
putting additional classroom around there.
Okay.
It's not just a sports complex, As I just said, the sports to bring in the money, but it's like you want to put like a second It's like how KC have two campus.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we visualize Meadowbrook going forward.
Okay. Mhm.
Have campus 1 and campus 2 are called down there the Henry Ward campus or something like that. You see what I'm saying? In honor of the founder of the school. So
Mhm.
no, that won't be left out, Mrs. Nelson. Even though I'm sports biased, as I tell you in my introduction, I always remember the academics are important. I am, so. But let me ask you the last question, Mrs. Ellis. What made Meadowbrook magical?
Mhm.
Mrs.
What make Meadowbrook
Magical.
magical? All right, let me think. Magical. It was a small school, and it's not. We learned that it's not the size, but the quality of education that we were able to foster, and the quality of students that came there from. I'm sure they came from all different financial and family background, and still, we were able to make a difference. So Meadowbrook was in that it could take young lives and turn them around into something worthwhile, and also in terms of the teachers that we could get together and had that close knit relationship, and so that was magical to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Ellis. And before I close it out, let me just ask each of you for a quick closing remark. Easton, any closing remark before I close out the program here?
One thing I have to say is, thanks for another opportunity to contribute to, the memories at Meadowbrook. It's always wonderful. Anything, that we can do to enhance the school, I'm happy to be a part of. And like I said at the top of the program, the conversation, I was very happy and enthusiastic to be a part of this conversation with these two wonderful ladies who have, really left an impression on my life. So.
Yeah, thank you, Easton. And Mrs. Nelson, any closing remark before I close out the program?
No, I continue to be amazed by what you are doing, how this is the ripple effect of that. I have never been associated with an alumni association, not from the school from which I graduated, not from the many schools in which I taught. So this is special. This is special. This is magical. And I hope I can make a contribution. I was very happy to have received an award a couple of weeks ago through Wayne and the alumni here in Toronto. And I have promised that I'm going to be a part of it. And whatever I can do to make that gem of a school shine even more, I am willing to do it. So I thank you once again for including me in this. It's an honor to have met Freddie at Meadowbrook many, many moons ago, and to be 15 minutes away from her right here in Milton. That doesn't happen all the time. So I'm grateful for social media, for Facebook, for you having reached out to me, for you, Easton. I see your post all the time. You, Blaster, you are doing a phenomenal job. Don't give it up.
Thank you, Mrs. Nelson. And you, Mrs. Ellis, any closing remark before I close out this program?
Yes. I feel grateful also for this platform in which we can come on and, share stories of the impact we have had on students' lives. And as teachers, to me, we appreciate that so much. It's priceless. When you look back and as students can say, this teacher, because of this teacher, I have become this, or I did that. We looking back, we would not have known, the impression we would have made on these kids. So I'm grateful that Easton, that you were my past student and that I made an impression on you, and many others too who will listen to this podcast and want to make that connection too. And having made this connection, and I could say it all started with Mrs. Nelson, who reached out to me on occasion talking about Meadowbrook High School and so on, and what was going on, and just brought me back into this whole thing. And so the memories are just percolating now, and I'm just happy to be a part of it, and in any way in which I can contribute in the future, I'm ready to really take part in it, because as you said, Prince, having taught at Meadowbrook High School, we feel like a part of it too, not only the students, but the past teachers together all form one big happy family, having been there, and we just want the best for the school right now, and anything I can do in the future. And you are doing a great job. This was an excellent idea. I heard you say that you're also going to, maybe you're thinking of having some kind of program where you do some sort of memories of past or students,
teachers
remembering those who have gone ahead. I think that's a marvelous idea. So, we are here to support you. And for Mrs. Nelson and myself, we do not know if there are other past teachers
our
here
past
in
alum, we call it.
Canada, past and all of that. Yeah. This is how, yes, people will, gradually hear the word will go around through social media, and we'll take it from there and do what we can. So thank you very much for the invitation and making me feel so welcome and reliving these memories. It's just wonderful. Thank you, and thank to Wayne too. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
And my student, Easton.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Ellis. And when I hear you talking that way, I always tell people a couple of times on this podcast, Meadowbrook is like our Hotel California. You can check out anytime, but you can't leave Meadowbrook. No matter how far you go. And when I hear you two ladies talking tonight about the power of the words, even though Mrs. Nelson took away my pen, the pen is indeed mightier than the sword. So, ladies, Mrs. Fredericka Codling-Ellis, let me roll off in Spanish. Mrs. Valerie Nelson, Easton Leiber, and Wayne, even though you're not here, you facilitated this conversation, and thank you very much. It has been a real pleasure talking to this former teachers, and Easton for the past 2 hours. And God bless all of us, as I always say, and God bless that great school at 2A Meadowbrook Avenue. The address is right, Easton, 2A?
Yes, very
2A,
right.
Meadowbrook Avenue, that we can have this conversation almost 40 years later, more than 40 years later.
Wow.
And it's like, we never skip a beat. So
Correct.
God bless that great school, and God bless all of us, and you guys have a good night.
Yes.
And thank
And
you.
we'll talk.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, man. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
So remember to like, share, and subscribe these Meadowbrook Memories podcasts, so neither you nor your friends will miss another Meadowbrook conversation. Thanks. Thanks for listening to Meadowbrook Memories, and remember to give us all the support and encouragement you can on whatever social media platform you are listening. And special thanks to my production manager, Kyle Prince, who takes care of everything involved in getting the podcast out every week. And without him, this podcast would not be possible. It is his expertise that allows me to do what I love doing every week, having great conversations about Meadowbrook Memories, and he's responsible for everything else. So again, thanks to my production manager, Kyle Prince. The views expressed by guests on this podcast are their own, and their appearances on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. While we will not add to statements made by a guest, we reserve the right to exclude statements or remarks that might be considered inflammatory. Thank you.